Welcome to the Light 'em Up Lounge. And today we talk about how cigars are made and other common questions around premium cigars. Club of Champions. Welcome to the Light 'em Up Lounge. My name is Reinhard Pohorec.
And I am Christian Wohlrab. Let's pull back the curtain on some of the most common questions the internet is asking about cigars, how they're made, how they're smoked, and let's give a human answer, not an AI answer. And let's lead with the most frequently asked question, and that is how cigars are made. Reinhard, what's the basics?
Well, most importantly, if you really want to understand how premium cigars are made, the best way is to go to the factory and see firsthand. What we're going to do today, though, is we'll take a look inside and we'll quite literally pull back the curtains of the construction of a premium cigar, and we'll cut one open and see what's inside.
Let's get into it. So I hear a lot about wrappers. Wrappers, Connecticut shade, sun-grown, and so on. What are the parts of the cigars, maybe to the people who don't know yet, who are maybe new to the passion of cigars, what is the core components and what are we going to see in a minute?
In simplified terms, every premium cigar is made up of three different components. The wrapper, which is what you see, the exterior of the cigar, the dress, the most pristine leaf, the most expensive leaf, and people argue that certain percentages, whether that's 50, 60, 70% of the overall aromatic expression of a cigar can come from the wrapper. Now, I don't like to simplify and just put a random number on how important the wrapper is, because that very much depends on the type of wrapper and the blend that's underneath, as well as the ring gauge of the cigar. Because proportionally, the smaller the ring gauge, the more I taste wrapper, because there's less filler to compete with. The bigger the ring gauge gets, the less influence the wrapper will have on the blend. Right underneath the wrapper is what's called the binder. And the binder is pretty much holding together the bunch, the filler. And the filler, that's the third component, is made up of a number of leaves, and we're talking about whole leaves of tobacco. That's one of the defining elements of a handmade premium cigar, a so-called long filler, because we're talking about whole leaves of tobacco. And again, depending on the vitola, depending on the ring gauge of the cigar, that could be anywhere from 3, 4, 5, or even more leaves of filler tobacco. But let's take a look inside and let's see these individual components that ultimately make up every handmade premium cigar.
Let's do it.
Let's take a look inside. That hurt, but sacrifices are necessary when we want to understand the good things in life. Okay, let's remove the ring first, obviously, because that's part of the overall experience of a cigar, but not part of the anatomy of a cigar themselves. First up, we spoke about the wrapper, and that's the leaf here that comes apart. And that we've just cut through. And this is, as you can see, a very thin and fragile wrapper from Cameroon, grown by the Maripfel family. Arguably the most expensive and most exquisite tobacco to dress any premium cigar. What we can see next is the bunch being held together by the binder. And we have to cut a little further in order to get to the intestines of this beauty here. And I'll just cut it a little further so we can truly peek inside. Binder and filler. Take off the cap. Take our binder. And then we start getting into the nitty-gritty and the filler leaves that make up the blend of the cigar.
So wrapper is one leaf. Binder?
Half a leaf.
Half a leaf?
So every leaf of tobacco has two halves separated by a center vein, and you can take both halves of the leaf and use it for cigars. So a pristine leaf of tobacco can make two wrappers, and depending on which side you use, the rollers have to be ambidextral and can roll cigars either with their right or with their left hand.
Okay. And the binder and the filler are another like 3-4 leaves?
These are multiple leaves, most likely coming from different origins, could be different seed types. That all makes the recipe for the blend. And there's different bunching methods, different ways of putting the filler together. One is called accordion, where you fold every little leaf like an accordion on top of each other, and then the bunchero has the leaves of the filler in his left hand. If he's right-handed, he puts them together and afterwards rolls them into the binder. This goes into a wooden press, the mold that then defines the shape of the cigar, and that press is turned multiple times. And after a certain period of time, this filler and binder are taken out of the press, handed over to the second one, most likely they're working in pairs. The first one who does the bunch, the second one who applies the wrapper.
I see.
In Cuba though, one bunchero or one torcedor does both. So he does both the bunching and also applies the wrapper themselves. And so here you can take a look at all the different leaves that make up the filler of this particular cigar, intricately put together, and that is the art and craft of the rollers to bunch in a way where you still have enough airflow. The cigar is packed with the leaves, but you still get enough draw so that the cigar not only draws properly, it has perfect combustion, and all of these technical elements play a crucial role in the performance of the cigar. Blending is a very intense and skilled process that takes years and years of experience, where you're not only looking for the right aromatic qualities and a harmonious, well-balanced blend in terms of the taste profile, but also you have to take into consideration the technical performance of the cigar. In other words, the combustibility. Because a cigar can taste great, but if it doesn't burn properly, there's no point.
We've all been there.
So here you see the different leaves that make up the blend.
Mm-hmm. You can see this one is not so dark in comparison, I think.
Also, you see the structure of the leaf with the center vein in this particular case, and then almost like frog's legs with the two sides of the leaf unfolding.
I'm surprised it's not totally dry, right? It's
not
actually it's quite elastic, if you will. So quite unexpected, if you ask me. I have never taken a look inside a cigar like this.
The second method of rolling a cigar is what they call entubar, traditional technique used in Cuba, when the individual leaves of tobacco are rolled in small little tubes, straw-like, if you will, and then you put the tubes on top and next to each other, and you roll that into the binder. That is a bit more tricky and a slower process. So if the roller or the banchero works accordion, he's going to be faster than when he rolls entubar, so his daily output is going to be smaller. And people argue whether one or the other is the better way of constructing a cigar. At the end of the day, the most important is that you have proper airflow, that the cigar draws properly, and the way you reposition certain parts of the leaf, because think about doing the bunch and you have a little extra of the leaf on both sides. If you tear parts and you reposition in the leaf smaller bits and pieces like this one here, where you put it and how you put it is going to play a vital role in how the cigar expresses itself, whether it's front-loaded with the tips of the tobacco leaf pointing towards the foot so that immediately you have a certain impact, or you do it the other way around. So there's a lot of intricacies and details, but I highly recommend that you really go and see a factory, watch them over their shoulders, and see how the bancheros, the roleros do their job. It's incredible. It's a century-old process, and it's a labor of love. It's a skill that takes a very long time to develop. Muscle memory, it's sensitivity in your fingertips in order to be able to perfectly construct a cigar. And it just goes to show, here we are lighting up cigars that cost $8, $10, $15, $20, $100, whatever it might be. But what goes into it? The complexity, the experience, the knowledge, and the skill that it takes is just remarkable. And we're just talking about the mechanics here and the way it's constructed. We haven't even touched on growing the tobacco, curing the tobacco, fermenting the tobacco, aging the tobacco. The blending we briefly touched upon, and here we are with how the cigar is eventually constructed.
Amazing. Well, quite the look inside the cigar here, and the most common question actually. Now, moving on to a second most common question, and this is how cigars are chosen. How do you pick the right cigar? This seems to be on people's minds out there, and I can imagine if you're at a wedding or invited for a wedding and you bring some cigars, for example, and you're not so much into it, you don't go to your local tobacconist every week and are not so knowledgeable about it. So what's the sort of 2 or 3 criterias how to pick a cigar?
Well, you spoke about the tobacconist. I think we need to mention that an experienced tobacconist retailer should always be your first point of contact and your first point of reference. These are the guardians of opening the doors for you to get into the cigar world. And it's their job to know the portfolio and the selection that they have curated in their humidor. And then, according to your answers for a few brief questions, pick the right cigar. And in essence, you want to understand, what is it that you're looking for? What's the occasion? Have you smoked cigars before? Is it your first cigar ever? How do you drink your coffee, for example? Or do you drink coffee at all? If you drink coffee, do you take it with milk, with sugar? Do you drink black coffee? Do you have a certain sensitivity for bitter notes? Are you a wine or a beer drinker? It's a few of these quick little questions that you can ask people in order to understand where does their palate sit and register. Yeah. And then you start looking into the humidor and picking a cigar that will align with their experience, their taste profile, their preference, and of course also the occasion and the budget. Because not everybody wants to splash out on a $50 or $100 cigar, especially not if it's your first one. You want to take easy steps and kind of slide into it. But also the question that you mentioned earlier, what if you're at a wedding, for example, and you don't necessarily have a tobacconist to guide you? I would not necessarily just play it safe, but I would pick a cigar that can appeal to a relatively wide audience because it's applicable to different taste preferences, different experiences. Not something that's going to kick you over the head because it's loaded and it's very strong, spicy, and borderline overpowering for a lot of people. But not something on the other end of the spectrum where you would consider it bland or there's not much going on. You want to find something that's kind of like an easy entry, but with enough excitement to give you a great first experience.
Gotcha. So I'm immediately making the analogy to wine, where it's quite common to ask the waiter, "Hey, can I get a fruity wine or something more heavy, full body?" We sort of know what that means. You probably don't want to go for a orange skin contact white wine for your first wine or your first glass on the day.
And you probably don't want to pick a 15% red that's super powerful, has tons of tannins, and it's just going to overwhelm you on the first get-go.
So we can be sure we go to a tobacconist, tell them, "Hey, I love coffee, black, bitter notes. I like tonic. I like grapefruit, stuff like this."
Absolutely.
And then they'll find something that's down your alley and they can pick for you. And then certainly the question is how big, how large should the cigar be? You got the big ones, may look a bit intimidating. We're smoking quite a small Vitola here.
It's a short cigar, but it's still a 48 ring gauge. So the thing is, the Vitola will define how long you're going to be smoking that cigar. So it's a matter of how much time do you have at your disposition or how much time do you want to spend with the cigar.
Point.
But at the same time, the length and the ring gauge of the cigar will define how intense, how pinpointed the aromatic delivery and the taste sensations will hit your palate. And most people, I would say counterintuitively, when they start, they want to pick something small because they feel that if I pick something small, I'm playing it safe. I'm not committing to a Churchill or a 6x60. But I say counterintuitive because a smaller ring gauge is harder to smoke. You need to be more observant. You need to be more careful with it. Gentle, slow puffs, because the faster you pull, the hotter the cigar is going to get, and it'll turn bitter on you, and it will be less enjoyable. So if you find something like a 50, 52 ring gauge, then all of a sudden it's a more mellow experience. The cigar doesn't get as hot, it doesn't get bitter on you if you're not smoking it very carefully. And that, for a novice or for a beginner, is very important as well.
I see. Well, I take with me that tobacconists usually know what they're talking about. You come up with a few things you like, and you may not want to go with a very small Vitola. You may want to actually go counterintuitive here. And
don't go huge either, because you don't want to have somebody sitting there for 3 hours or being frustrated because after half of the cigar they're like tired and they're not really into it. So pick a solid middle ground, I would say.
All right.
Another misconception is oftentimes people judge the book by its cover. So the look of the wrapper, the color of the wrapper, for a lot of people will be sort of a telltale sign of what to expect. And oftentimes you hear, "Oh, I don't smoke Maduros. I don't smoke dark cigars," because people feel intimidated and they're afraid that the cigar is going to be super strong. Whereas that's not necessarily the case. A Maduro does not have to be strong. It can be, but usually what you'll be finding in a Maduro is darker notes, rich fruity or chocolatey notes, but not necessarily the nicotine strength.
Got you. Okay. Well, that's how to pick a cigar. And this leads me right to the next common question asked out there is cigars, how are they smoked? So you elaborated to, maybe not too quick and not too, don't take forever. Can you just leave a cigar for half an hour, 2 hours? Can you cut it again, maybe cut the front of it? Like, what's the etiquette here from your opinion?
Of course, if you don't draw on your cigar regularly, eventually it's going to go out. If that happens, no harm done, and you can relight the cigar. What some people do, and it can be very beneficial for the experience, is when you relight the cigar, first you take off the ash, you relight it, and then you blow through the cigar rather than pulling on it. You degas and you get rid of some of these burnt notes that are in the cigar, push it out, and then the cigar experience is going to be more pleasant after that again. I would not relight the cigar after it went out, it cooled down for a while, because you will always have a slight residual bitterness, ashy taste in the cigar. Because as you smoke, as you pull, there's smoke traveling along the body of the cigar, and some of that will be left in the cigar, and once it cools off, it basically tastes and smells like an ashtray that you've left for too long. When people ask, can I smoke this the next morning? I would not recommend that.
Yeah.
Pick a smaller cigar first, leave it, finish it, whatever floats your boat, but don't relight it the next morning. It's not going to be pleasant.
I got you. Yeah, I was immediately thinking of coffee, You probably also don't gonna let the coffee cool off and then put it in the microwave to heat it up on the next day.
Especially when it's a beautiful espresso.
Probably not gonna be as good. All right, thank you. Well, moving on. Next question, Reinhard. So, how to store a cigar? This is one of the most common questions asked. How do you store it? And maybe here, please elaborate on a pragmatic approach and maybe a most sophisticated. I mean, we got a humidor back there. Fair enough, not everybody has it. Do you have to have it? What's the basics here? Because you might get a box or a few cigars even as a gift, and you're not smoking them today, maybe not tomorrow. So what should people do?
So as you've seen with all the questions we touched on so far, we tried to give simple, short answers to very complex questions, which is always difficult, but to give our viewers kind of like a quick fire 101 on these very commonly asked questions. How to store a cigar. Relative humidity, temperature. Two key factors in aging or storing cigars, if you will. And the reason I say relative humidity is because it is relative to the ambient temperature. And you want to keep both of these as consistent as possible. A generic rule of thumb for a lot of people is just around 20 degrees Celsius and 69, maybe 70% relative humidity. For our Fahrenheit guys, they usually say kind of like 70-70. So 70% relative humidity, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Keep it consistent, because the cigar needs a certain humidity so it doesn't dry out, lose its oils, lose its vibrancy, lose its aromatic expression. And at the same time, you don't want to overdo it on the humidity, because otherwise the cigar can start to spoil, it can develop mold, and it can harm the experience. Also, when smoking a cigar that's over-humidified, it will not combust properly, it won't burn, you have to relight that damn thing 25 different times, and it's going to turn bitter on you.
I see.
So what are simple options? A desktop humidor that probably holds around 50 cigars with a simple humidification device. The easiest system and solution in a lot of those instances is to use a humidity pack like Bovi does. You have a very clear indication on the relative humidity that you'll be getting from those two-way humidity control bags. There's a mixture of salts and water in there, and that almost guarantees you the relative humidity that's indicated on the bags. So a 69% Bovida does the job just beautifully well. And you can put one of these in the humidor together with your cigars, and you're going to be fine for months. Obviously, these packs will eventually dry out if the ambient humidity is too low, and the bag will become hard, almost brittle, and then you know it's time to change them. Be careful with the amount of cigars that you put with a certain amount of Bovida packs. The company does a great job in informing you how many bags do you need per a certain number of cigars. They have different sizes, they have different relative humidity levels, and that's a great solution. They also provide humidor bags, think of it like a oversized Ziploc bag with a Boveda pack inside. And if you want to go really simple and you're just starting, or you've been gifted 2-3 cigars or a little coffin as a gift pack, put that in a humidor bag from Boveda with one of those little pouches inside, and you'll be fine.
So basically a Ziploc bag or some sort of container that...
Speaking of container, what people do also is they use coolie doors, airtight Tupperware containers, I call it for a better lack of words, or you use like a camping coolie door. And some people use that to store their cigar boxes very conveniently with large Boveda packs in there, or they might even put a cedar tray in there together with their cigars and the right humidification pack. Obviously, if you want to upgrade, if you know that you're getting serious about your cigar game, a proper humidor with a humidification system, ideally with multiple sensors checking the RH inside the humidor, and an automated humidification system, that's fed with distilled water, and ideally ventilation that equally distributes the humidity inside that cabinet, for example, is a great solution.
Okay. Well,
and if you get really serious, build a walk-in humidor.
Well, we're getting there. One day. Fantastic. Thank you, Reinhard. So moving on, next question. How do cigars make you feel? Well, I can take this one. Fantastic. Actually, I read that a cigar contains the nicotine, in theory, just factual, as much as a box of cigarettes. However, you don't inhale, of course. So even myself, who I don't smoke that often, maybe a cigar a week, that I don't get sort of a nicotine rush. Now that may change if you're having 2, 3 or more, and obviously depending on your experience and how often you smoke it. But
the absorption of the nicotine is very different when
Yeah.
you enjoy a premium cigar compared to
So
cigarettes. Plus, you don't have all the other crap in there. This is pure nature. This is pure tobacco. There's nothing on it. It's not flavored. There's no other chemicals on there. This is as natural as it gets. And as with everything, enjoy in moderation.
So you don't get high on it, of course. You don't necessarily get a rush or anything. Just puff it, don't inhale, and take yourself maybe an hour or 45 minutes of time.
Smoke slowly,
just to enjoy
smoke in well-ventilated rooms so you don't have a ton of like lingering smoke around you. And every once in a while, when people feel a bit weird when enjoying a cigar, it can be ammonia that's left in the tobacco, which is affecting you, not necessarily just the nicotine. And one way to get rid of that effect relatively quickly is sugar. Either you drink a sip of a sugar beverage, or just a little pack of sugar, put it on your tongue, and that discomfort is gone.
Reinhard, last question. How are cigars flavored? Now, sort of comes back to this, right? You talked about blending cigars. There's different leaves that you can take from different areas, different seeds. Now, certainly that makes one flavor component. Talk about flavors. And
one thing to be very clear, because you said, how are cigars flavored? The quick answer is they aren't. We're talking about handmade premium cigars, and these are not flavored at all. And by that I mean artificially or externally. There is a category in the wider cigar scope which are called flavored cigars, and obviously there the manufacturers apply certain natural flavor enhancing materials, let's call it, or substances, in order to introduce extra aromatic components. But what we're talking about with handmade premium cigars, that is not the case. And the only aromatic expression you get is from the leaves of tobacco different seed varietals grown in different terroirs, different countries of origin, different regions, and depending on the soil, the way the tobacco is then cured, fermented, all of that will have a determining aspect on the aromatic quality of that particular leaf. And then you can blend different types of leaves, different seed varietals, different origins, and that's your palette that you as the painter can work with to introduce different colors and paint a beautiful picture.
Thank you, Reinhard, for answering some of those most common questions out there. Let's get to our final part of the show. I know in the last episode we recommended a book, and we thought this could be a great thing to continue. And
absolutely, we like to find some diamonds in the rough every once in a while.
That's right.
And I want to hear your book recommendation this time. I'm curious what you've been enjoying, what you've been digging through, and whether you could share with us one of your book recommendations.
A pleasure. Last time you shared the Range by David Epstein, and I brought one of my favorites today. It's Malcolm Gladwell, Tipping Point. I think his experiments and whatever he does to find out why things just grow exponentially are so interesting, so exciting. Products, ideas in the US and anywhere else in the world, he's observing and he's trying to find out what made that thing, that person, that idea go viral. Viral would be the word we use today. In the book, he still talks about epidemic, something that goes viral, of course. And yeah, that's one of my favorites, and certainly can recommend everyone to read some cool stories.
Do you have one or two key takeaways or examples that he talks about in the book?
So he talks about certain shoes, might have been like Birkenstock or some sort of shoe that was never in fashion. And after years that it's been out there, it sort of just went through the roof. And he's like, why did that happen? And he found out that there needs to be 3 types of people in the same room, in the same time, in the same space. And that needs to be mavens, connectors, and salesmen, I think it was. So people who love the product and who are not really vocal about it, but they're experts in it. And then you have people who have a huge network of weak ties. And then you have people who are really good at communicating, the salesman, sort of the anchor man from TV shows or news channels, and anchor man or anchor women, of course, where those people, when they team up, consciously or unconsciously, that creates quite the viral effect. So, yeah.
Very interesting. Cool learning. Thank you for sharing, Christian. And thank you for bringing up those questions. As we said, there's so many intricacies and details when it comes to premium cigars. And we can only scratch the surface and very briefly touch on some of the most commonly asked points and elements of the answers to that. But I can only encourage every single one of them out there watching, listening, trying to learn about cigars. This is going down the rabbit hole, and it's a beautiful journey, but buckle up because there's a ton of things to be learned. One thing that truly fascinates me is when you speak to the most sophisticated, experienced, skilled professionals in the cigar world, they never call themselves masters or experts because they understand that they will always be students and they'll always be apprentices of the leaf. Every single day you learn something new. And even people in Cuba and the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, Honduras, you name it, who spent their entire life in tobacco and cigars are still discovering, are still learning, and it never stops. So don't think that you know it all. There's always something to be learned, and that's the beauty of cigars.
Lovely. Thank you, Reinhard.
Thank you.
And with that, light 'em up.